Faces of the northern capital. Dreams of Greece, Venice and Palmyre are seen by the Neva and the beautiful city that has risen above the Neva waters during the last century and a half. I am waiting for you to come up to the Palace Square opposite the Winter Palace. The palace was built in the middle of the 18th century by Francesco Bartolomeo Rastrelli. He was born in Italy, but spent his childhood in Versailles, at the court of the French King Louis XIV. Here in Saint Petersburg, he became a great architect. His palaces and the Smolny Cathedral are included by art historians in a number of masterpieces of architecture that represent our present culture. Just take a moment to admire this palace, please. It has been used to admiration. And you must surely agree it does deserve it. The palace is alive. Its columns run like the waves of a river. The palace is equal to the Neva in scale. It plays with the beautiful Neva, taming the river to the city with its beauty. Rastrelli built the palace for the Empress Elizabeth, the daughter of Tsar Peter I, Peter the Great. Another empress, Catherine the Great, had to live in the luxurious rooms with golden decorations. She considered herself equal to Peter the Great. Her shadow still dwells in the buildings on Palace Embankment. We are now going along the embankment from the Winter Palace to the Hermitage Bridge that crosses the Winter Canal. Let us proceed with the story. The small hermitage was erected by an architect from France, Jean-Baptiste Michel Valin de la Motte. He came from Paris to be the president of the Saint Petersburg Academy of Arts. But he did not stay here for long, as he did not satisfy the empress by his free thinking. This was a rare and unique case. In most cases, architects who had come stayed here all their lives. The Neva and the city did not let them go. Behind the facade of the small hermitage hides the hanging garden. There used to be a lot of birds, trimmed trees in soil-filled bowls, bushes and flowers and fountains. The northern Semiramis, or Catherine the Great, used to walk around here, and the birds singing accompanied her walks. The next building is the Big Hermitage. It was erected for the Empress. The courtiers she invited could admire the paintings and sculptures that were bought for her in Europe. The Empress confessed in one of her letters that the abyss looks in through the Hermitage windows. Catherine felt that unsolved and dangerous mysteries were hidden in the beauty of the Neva and the city. An arched gallery bridges the Winter Canal. The gallery connects the Big Hermitage with the Hermitage Theatre, which was built in 1783 by Giacomo Antonio Carengi. Carengi was born in the province of Bergamo in the north of Italy. Here in the northern capital of Russia, he became one of the first architect classicists to begin creating the new world of noble simplicity and calm magnificence by porticos and colonnades. This world meant a great change for the Russians, developing their senses and the citizenship mentality. It looks as if Catherine had not known how dangerous such a transformation could be. Dangerous both for the Tsars and for their subjects. In what lies the danger? The time will come and show that it is a crime to preserve slavery in an enlightened and educated country. Please descend to the river and stop on the lower steps nearest to the water. When you are there, switch the players on again. Let me introduce to you the two main heroes of the architectural performance that has been taking place on the Neva River for 3 centuries. The first main hero is the Peter and Paul fortress in the center of the Neva Delta. It was built on the order of Tsar Peter on May the 25th, 1703. This day is considered the birthday of Saint Petersburg. Since then, the city has become 300 years old. Look, the architectural story is full of unexpected things, as it should be. In front of you is a long line of bastions, curtains, ravelins. Serenity is imprinted on them. The serenity that the earth has been longing for. The elegant vertical structure, crowned with a golden spire, rises up to 122.5 meters. It shows the Russians longing for heaven. The polarity between heaven and earth is softened by the play of the domes, and this wonderful picture reveals the truth about the roots of Saint Petersburg. The first builders of the beautiful city believed that everything new was better. This is an illusion, a dream, utopia, a bright belief. The second main hero of the performance on the Neva is the ensemble of the Basil Island, or Vasilyevsky Island. For 100 years, the city has been waiting for the Basil Island point to find its artistic expression. It was brought to life by Thomas de Tomone and Adrian Zakharov in a poem named The Temple, sitting on a kind of bow. You must surely agree that on the Neva a fabulous performance is taking place. The river here is the stalls, where the best places for spectators. The islands are the stage, on which the actors, the architectural chef d'oeuvre, tell us about the impossible. In Petersburg, the ideal of classical beauty has acquired reality, unity in variety. The unity of heaven and water in the variety of ensembles on the island that are floating out into the sea of eternity. The first incarnation of the classical idea was the Acropolis in Athens, with the Parthenon. The austere beauty of this temple, built in the 5th century, has kept people in awe by its incredible perfection. In the history of mankind, there have been quite a number of replicas of the great temple. In front of us, we see the creative force of the Hellenistic understanding of the beautiful that has developed in New Russia and started another golden age, this time in Russian culture. The Athens Acropolis is the incarnation of the unity of heaven and earth. Saint Petersburg is the incarnation of the unity of heaven and water that has become the beautiful city, similar to a fairy tale, someone's dream, like a promise that heaven is possible here on earth. It is possible, isn't it? We are coming back to the palace embankment to pass through the Hermitage Arch and walk along the Winter Canal to the Pevchesky Bridge. If it is not easy to cross the road on the embankment, I will wait for you to cross. Behind the arch is Pushkin's Petersburg. The shadows of Pushkin's book heroes are still alive. Here, Lisa from the Queen of Spades is waiting for her lover, German, but he will never come. He will never come. He has another passion, gambling. And they both die. He dies somewhere there in the gambling house. She dies here, running down the steps leading to eternity. Water flows like time, but does not forget the past. On the wall to the left, there is a newly discovered fragment of Tsar Peter's Winter Palace, the Winter Palace that gave its name to the small Winter Canal. The wall to the right is the new Hermitage, or the Emperor's Museums, erected in 1852 by Leo Klenze, one of the great German architects. If you have not yet seen the Atlantes, turn to Millionaya Street, and then by all means come back to the Winter Canal. To understand the mystery of the Palace Square, one should keep to the suggested route. You should by now have reached the second Hermitage Bridge. Please stand in the middle of it. Look back. Look ahead of you. Look to your right, to your left. To quote Théophile Gautier, it is Venice, real Venice. Do you agree? Théophile Gautier was a French writer from the middle of the 19th century whose opinions were respected all over Europe. I am not one to argue with authorities. The next bridge on our route is the Pevchesky Bridge that spreads into an unusual width in front of the Capella building. When you are on the bridge, please switch on the player. Fear not, I have not left you, dear ladies and gentlemen. Please place yourself in the center of Pevchesky Bridge and look straight at the angle of the building that continues further along the river and the square. One side of it is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The other side is the General Headquarters. The building was erected in 1829. The architect is Carlo Rossi, a great architect of Saint Petersburg. Look at it once more and walk slowly in the direction of the Palace Square. The angle of the building is the first view of the Petersburg Sahara. Citizens of Petersburg gave the 3 squares in the city center the name Sahara. Imagine the palace square without the general headquarters and without the Alexander column. The empty field in front of the Admiralty. Imagine that the trees are not there either. And the square in front of the St. Idret's Cathedral that took almost 100 years to build. The dust of the St. Petersburg Sahara roared, an emptiness that no ordinary man can overcome. It can be crossed only by infantry or horse troops. Have you walked out into the square? See for yourself. This is not the desert in front of you. This is a mirage in the desert that is called the Northern Palmyre. Palmyre was a city of columns erected by the Romans in the sands of the Arabian desert at the beginning of the new era. The streets, squares, theatres, temples are situated along an architectural axis. Along the main axis are the monumental porticos and triumphal arches. Rows of columns turn the squares and the streets into magnificent halls and galleries. Palmyre today is an ancient ruin that is asleep, dreaming of its former glory. Such dreams don't fade away in the morning. The ruins are immortal. Such dreams float over the earth, searching for the spirit of the place that will allow them once again to come true. In front of you is one of these places, the City of Columns, erected by the Russians in the vast space of the Neva Delta. The ensemble of the Palace Square is the third in the row of the main heroes of the architectural performance that takes place on the Neva. Let us have a thorough look at all parts of the ensemble in time sequence. Please feel free to switch the player on and off when you so wish. The first in time was the Winter Palace by the famous Francesco Bartolomeo Rastrelli. Russia led endless wars. Nevertheless, the erection of such a magnificent palace became an event of state importance. The main building works were completed in 1761. Inside the Palace Square building hides the vast ambassador's yard. An arch with fine gates leads into the yard. Along the facades, Corinthian columns stand in 2 rows, single, coupled and tripled. The columns alternate with luxuriously framed windows and are crowned by entablements or crowns. Above the rows of columns are statues. God stands on top of a balustrade. Gods lie on the frontones and look towards the city that rises up in the desert. The palace is turned into a festival of dancing columns. Glory of Russia. Yes, real glory, everywhere. Glory is affirmed not only by the decorations, but even by the color of the palace walls, originally painted yellow to match the sunshine. Glory. Oh columns, oh golden decorations, oh royal dreams of those persons whose destiny was to reign. Alas. The Empress Elizabeth had died before the palace was finished. The masterpiece of Rastrelli started to live a life of its own, changing inside with the changing of the governments of the Romanov dynasty. Now the rooms are occupied by the Hermitage Museum collections, which had originally been placed in several suites in buildings that had been built specially for them. The second character of the presented ensemble is, look back, the General Headquarters by Carlo Rossi. After the Great Patriotic War of 1812 resulted in the victory over Napoleon, a grand building process started all over Saint Petersburg. The aim was clear. The beauty of the capital of Russia should match its power. Carlo Rossi was the head of the Aesthetics Commission. He defied no challenge. The task was to connect a street to Palace Square, which branched off diagonally. What could be done? Here, come and have a look and switch the player on again. Have you seen it? He had to place the arches at an angle to one another. Five arches connected together are like the chords at the beginning of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. The enormous masses of vaults lead the crowd through the arches at a certain angle, imperceptibly directing them to the middle of the square, where a breathtaking view awaits them. The real Petersburg view, where the impossible takes place. The arch of the General Headquarters, a monument to honor the victories of the Great Patriotic War of 1812. You must agree that the architectural victory that has been achieved is no less imposing. For more than half a century, the Winter Palace by Rastrelli has dominated in the Palace Square. No rivalry seemed possible. Yet rivalry is not the word among those who possess the divine gift. Rastrelli's Corinthian columns start an organ concert. Rossi's triumphal arch strengthens the main axis of the building. The organ gets louder by additional pipes. Again, Corinthian columns. As a result, two wings appear, forming a pleasing ensemble that does not lessen the joy of the General Headquarters, nor the Winter Palace. Is it absolute beauty? It is a masterpiece of city-building art. The miracle is achieved. The Palace Square has appeared, and its architecture is marked by two wonderful realizations: the Russian Baroque and the Russian Empire. Above the triumphal arch of the General Headquarters, Roman legionnaires drag the chariot of the Empire's glory through earthly space and time, through infinite space. Oh, Palmyre in the desert of Arabia, you will not be forgotten, not even in the far north. Turn away from the chariot set on the arch attic. Don't look at it. Otherwise the Roman soldiers will drag on, and the 6 giant horses will step into nowhere. Glory will turn into shame. Aren't you afraid? You know well the architectural games that once started never end, as it should never end, so that eternity can continue to color our dreams with various fairy tales about one and the same, eternal happiness and eternal glory. The third participant of the presented ensemble is the Alexander Column by Auguste Montferrand. After the death of Alexander I, his successor Nicholas I thought it necessary to monumentalize the memory of the emperor, liberator of Russia and Europe from Napoleon. The idea of a freestanding column and its execution goes back to the architectural geniuses Montferrand, and engineer Betancourt. The material is polished red granite. The weight of the monolith is about 600 tons. The pedestal is strengthened by 1,250 6-meter-long beams, stuck into the earth. The stone stands on the pedestal supported only by its own weight, that presses it. The main idea in the architectural design are the proportions visible from all points of the vertical. The column is crowned by a bronze figure of an angel spearing a snake with his cross. This symbolizes the victory of good over evil. The face of the angel has the features of Alexander I. The height of the monument is 47.5 meters. To Alexander the Blessed, by grateful Russia, reads the inscription. The column was placed on the pedestal in 1832. The witnesses of the event told the following. On the square and the adjoining streets, horses, carriages, people formed one gigantic crowd. The general headquarters was turned into an amphitheatre of ancient Rome, comprising 10,000 people. Will the column fall down when they take the scaffolding off or not? God save us. The column will not fall down. It is the vertical that determines in the 3 dimensions of Earth the might and power of Russia. "170 years have passed. The Alexander column is still connecting earth and heaven." The unveiling took place in 1834. As if born out of the earth in huge rows with the beating of drums, the columns of Russian troops passed. This magnificent show, unique in the world, that lasted for 2 hours, wrote poet Zhukovsky, who witnessed the triumphal marching of the army that were victorious in the Patriotic War of 1812. The miracle had happened, a most wonderful square, its beauty heightened by the column, stretched far and large. Yet the most interesting feature of the palace square is the fact that it is not there at all. There are no definitions within which it can be closed. There is continuous movement of the great space, similar to the flow of the magnificent Neva, the beautiful. Let's go with the flow of space to the main Admiralty building. One can do it on horseback, on foot, in any case, never straying from the mood that had been given by the march. Ahead of us is the turn-off to the Palace Bridge that invites us up to the point of Vasilyevsky Island. We don't accept this invitation. We are moving onwards, looking at the main Admiralty. In the center of the side facade is a portico with columns. Rows of columns to the left and to the right. Ah, Rossi. Ah, Zakharov. Our great architects of Petersburg. When you reach the Alexander Garden that goes along the main facade of the Admiralty, take a rest, please. Sit down on a bench in the shadow of the trees that have grown and transformed the Sahara of Saint Petersburg into an oasis. Let me introduce you to the 4th hero of the performance on the Neva, the main Admiralty building by Adrian Zakharov. During the reign of Tsar Peter, the Admiralty was a fortress, surrounded by ditches with water on the side of the square, and by the shipyard open to the Neva. The tower on the gates appeared at the very beginning. What for? For the city to enjoy it. When the fortress shipyard became an administrative institution, the building was enlarged by 1 story, and on the tower a spire with a caravel was erected. Who needs a splendid front entrance to a place where people slave away? It's the city where the artistic and the utilitarian elements have long been fighting. The winner has been the artistic, believe me. The architect Ivan Korobov gave the Admiralty Tower the appearance that matches the Peter and Paul Cathedral bell tower. What for? To unite the city divided by the Neva into separate parts. At the end of the 18th century, a bright Saint Petersburg architect, Agent Zakharov, started to work. His inspiration transformed the Admiralty. Zakharov repeats the outline of the former fortress shipyard, and he hides the tower behind decorative columns like a precious relic. He leaves open the golden ray with the caravel. Come up. The time for a solemn and splendid walk along the 400-meter-long main facade of the Admiralty has come. The widely grown linden trees prevent us from seeing the whole picture, so I invite you to walk along the Admiralty pathway, Admiralteyski Prejezd. When you can see the open perspective again, switch your players on. The left wing of the Admiralty shows a colonnade, a column portico, another colonnade. Notice that the right wing is exactly the same. The classicists in architecture never break the laws of symmetry. We are following the rhythm of the axes, both of the windows and the columns. The columns are not Corinthian, but Doric. The Corinthian columns look too luxurious. The Doric columns are more solemn. The preservation of the past allows Zakharov to create this masterpiece that was given to St. Petersburg after the century-long schooling from the Neva, from Europe and from Russia. Are you surprised about Russia in this context? You think it has nothing to do with it? The very roots of St. Petersburg go back to Russian architecture. Do believe me, in spite of the external difference, the Admiralty is closely related to the old Russian monasteries. Have you seen them? Do you remember? The monasteries are surrounded by high walls. One gets inside the monastery through the overgate towers. The souls of the congregation are purified both by God and by the beauty of the monasteries. And look again. Climbing the steps one by one, the Admiralty Overgate Tower rises up to heaven. The first step is the cube, the archetypal form at the basis of the universe. The second step is the Ionic colonnade. That is the space and time meter tradition, dating from Greek-Roman antiquity, passing through the European Enlightenment into a more joyous day of St. Petersburg. The third and final is the top of the golden spire with a 3-mast caravel going through times and spaces to where grace and glory await Russia. The heroes and gods placed on the tower connect the space coordinates that refer to Petersburg with the time coordinates that refer to the Earth. On the 4 angles of the cube are the heroes of the ancient world: Alexander of Macedonia, Achilles, Artaxerxes, and Pyrrhus. They are the incarnations of that spirit force that gives victory in battles and glory to the motherland. The colonnade is crowned by the statues of gods. 4 elements: fire, air, water and earth. 4 seasons, 4 winds. There is Isis who invented shipbuilding. There is astronomy's muse, Urania. Stop just in front of the tower and switch the player on again, please. The attic is crowned with a high relief, the birth of the Russian fleet. Neptune is passing the miraculous trident to Peter. By that, the god of the seas gives to the Tsar the power over the past, the present, and the future. Tsar Peter will use the generous gift of God. Rejecting the past, he will sacrifice the present of Russia for her future, that was cut out to his own measures by sleight of hand. Don't take it, Peter. Don't take that dreadful trident shaft into your hands. What is done cannot be undone. The victory is proclaimed by 6 laurel wreaths, 3 by 3, that crown the winners. To the right and to the left of the arch, the winged goddesses of glory lower their banners. To the right and to the left of the arch are magnificent groups. 3 and 3 sea nymphs are holding 2 spheres, a heavenly and an earthly one, a theme of their own. In earthly life, the burden is carried on the shoulders of women. The men are warriors and are given victory for their readiness to die on the battlefield. The Admiralty was erected before the Patriotic War of 1812, and it became an artistic witness to what had happened. Russia won the war. For the Russians of that bright period, 2 things: the motherland and the Russian people were not just an empty sound. New Russia and Old Russia were one. The Admiralty Tower is full of joy as sadness takes your forces away. The tower proclaims a pure Russian faith. A human being is elevated by beauty that is inseparable from the truth and the good. The human being is elevated by beauty that raises us to the heights of the spirit. What did the educated Russians lack at the beginning of the 19th century? Freedom, the natural consequence of enlightenment, unachievable in an absolute monarchy. We are walking to St. Isaac's Cathedral along the main alley of Alexander Garden, and will stop at the northern facade of the cathedral. St. Isaac's, the giant of Auguste Montferrand, is the 5th main hero in the performance that is still being performed on the stage of the Neva. When the cathedral was built, Montferrand embarked upon a project of temporarily placing the church of Isaac Dalmat in the Admiralty. This had bad consequences, as the sculptures in the interiors of the building were reported not to conform to the ideas of Christianity. Some of the statues were not placed where they had been planned, and with some others the orders were cancelled. They also wanted to replace the heroes in heaven with statues of saints, but Fortunately, the state treasury did not support these innovations. Do you feel sorry for Adrian Zakharov? I do. Cube, arch, colonnade, pediment. Pediment, colonnade, arch, cube. Petersburg is heaven, but only for gods, tsars, and heroes. For mere mortals, it has always been a tragedy. In 1819, the ceremony of establishing the foundation stone of the 4th St. Isaac's Cathedral took place. In 1858, it was consecrated. The building process lasted 40 years. When you are in a good position, please switch the player on again. St. Isaac's is a giant, like an Egyptian pyramid that has risen up in the sands of the Petersburg Sahara. By its magnificence, it outdoes anything one could dream of the ancient ruins of Arabic Palmyre. The Corinthian columns in Palmyre are 10 meters high. The Corinthia columns of the 4 porticos of the Petersburg Colossus are 17 meters high. All in all, there are 112 granite columns of different heights. The height of the cathedral is 101.5 meters. Its weight is 300,000 tons. Isaac the Giant has not sunk into the Never Marsh, standing as it is on a monolithic platform. Below, there are 10,000 wooden piles, 6.5 meters each. On top of them are 2 rows of granite slabs, and above that is quarry stone. The cathedral has been standing for a century and a half, and it will stay longer, glorifying the eternity, as a building in empire style should. While building St. Isaac's, the brilliant drawer from France, Auguste Montferrand, turned into a great builder, as side by side with him stood all the architects of Saint Petersburg, the engineer, Betancourt, the sculptor, Vitali, the artist, Karl Brunellov, Fyodor Bruni, and other masters.
Со страхом Божиим и верою On church festivals, the lamps held by angels were lit. The bells rang out, and the domes that looked like great warrior helmets summoned hundreds of Russians from the whole of Russia. They were met by the huge bases of the granite columns on pedestals. Спаси, Боже, люди Твоя, и благослови достояние Твое.
Do you understand what the scale of the temple has suggested? That people are nothing. People are like sea foam beating against the rock, trying to ask heaven to feel pity for their sufferings. Everything is hopeless. For an empire that established itself here and now on the earth, human life is an empty notion.
Всегда ныне присно и во веки веков. On church festivals, when crowds of people would gather round the square, the gates were open and through them appeared a huge space filled with the force of 4 triumphal arch columns, filled with the sunlight streaming from the dome of heaven, coloured by candlelit cascades, with glistening gilt, precious stones, mosaics, and many-coloured paintings. Is the prayer to God heard here? Or is the only thing heard the glory, sung to the stars of heaven and the earth? Or is the only thing heard glory, sung to the stars of heaven and earth?
Яко Ты еся освящение наше, и Тебе славу воссылаем, Отцу и Сыну и Святому Духу. Молите, молите Господа с небес, молите Ему ближних, молите Господа с небес, молите Его ближних.
On church festival days, when crowds of people gathered inside the cathedral near the triumphal arches, the golden gates to the altar opened, and in front of those who came to Mass a glass window with Christ the Saviour appeared. He was crucified for the sins of the humans, and he resurrected. To become so alien in such places where glory is sung to the stars of earth. Is it possible that paradise, or heaven on earth, can only be a wicked place for people? The universe giant cathedral is silent, enjoying its power. Look at the portico of the Horse Guard Riding Hall, erected by Carengi, and then look back at the cathedral, and agree that classicism considers the spiritually orientated human being the measure of all things. The Empire style ignores the individual as it rules masses, and the Empire style demands. It is indifferent to everything except glory. The golden helmet of St. Isaac's dominates over the Neva Delta, communicating with the dome of heaven. At the foot of it, another life has vividly been carrying on. What life? We will find out now. Breaking the stream of space in St. Petersburg, Sahara, St. Isaac's directs it to the Neva. We are going to the huge cathedral and then out into the square where the bronze horseman is either stuck or flies through the times. The square was first named Senate Square, as on the left of it the Senate was built after the reign of Peter. After the monument to Tsar Peter appeared, the square got its second name, Petrovskaya, Peter's Square. Its third name was the Decembrist Square, which was bestowed upon it in memory of the young generals of 1812. Having come back from Europe to Russia when the War of 1812 was over, and having found no liberty in their own land, they became members of a secret union. And then, in December 1825, they revealed themselves in Peter's Square. And this square was to take the role of Golgotha in the history of Russia. How did it happen? The young generals chose the path to fight for freedom and followed that path, blindly, not knowing exactly where to go.
With no clear aim, not understanding the interrelations between the means and the aims, they followed their set aim. For a person free in spirit, death and slavery are the same. Come on, heroes. It's time to start acting. The stage is ready. The stone colossus is standing like an Egyptian pyramid. The moment is right. Emperor Alexander I is dead, and they have not pledged allegiance to Emperor Nicholas I yet. Into that gap between already and yet, eternity looks at Saint Petersburg as if through a window. The time has come. It is December the 14th, 1825. Defend liberty, young generals. Confirm the victory of the Russian people on the Borodino battlefield. At 11 a.m., the Muscovite regiment comes out into the square. The future Emperor Nicholas I brought his own Transfiguration regiment. The square is crowded with rebelling laymen. By 4 o'clock, the ratio of the rebels to the pro-governmental troops is 3 to 12. The rebels stepped down onto the Neva ice to go towards the Peter and Paul fortress. The cannonballs broke the ice and the soldiers started to drown. In the evening, the first day of Russian freedom was over. The square was turned into Golgotha, where only the best were crucified. The young Union members who cared too much about order in the state were executed by hanging or sent to exile in Siberia. And Rossi, as he erected in 1834 a multi-column row of Senate and Synod united by another triumphal arch, finished the outlet to the Neva for Saint Petersburg, Sahara, the desert where human beings were not meant to live. I introduce to you one more hero of the performance, the main hero. The bronze horseman unveiled in 1782 on the granite rock, Thunderstone, the inscription runs, "To Peter the First from Catherine the Second." The creator was a sculptor, Etienne Maurice Falconet. His pupil, Maria Collo, brilliantly modelled the emperor's face. The antiquity hero having stopped his horse at the edge of the rock shows Russia the way, but maybe everything is completely different. Tsar Peter addresses two abysses, the heavens and the sea, and the abysses answer him. Heaven sympathizes with the inhabitants of St. Petersburg. The sea doesn't know sympathy or pity. What is it about? Alexander Pushkin, in his long poem The Bronze Horseman, answers that question. In Petersburg, evil is covered by a purple robe. This robe is a splendid dress worn by the Tsars on special occasions. To be purple-born is to be born into the Tsar dynasty. The color purple is the purest red, the color of beauty. Evil is an almighty, omnipotent power that does not even allow a whisper against it. The opposite to almighty allows everything. And the wild sea roars, and the wild sea laughs. Just you wait, Saint Petersburg. Nature, human nature included, can become trapped in an abyss that obeys not even the Tsars. And thus will it be. We are leaving the stone desert, charmed by its own beauty, to go out to the Neva. The Admiralty pavilions stand firmly in their positions. The axis reaches heaven with a vertical ray. The cube, the arch, a colonnade to the left, a colonnade to the right. The Admiralty is the song of glory that says, "In the beauty of the universe we find the raison d'être of the good and the true." The history of Saint Petersburg makes us see another truth. The beauty covers both the good and the bad. Where is the truth? When you go out to the English embankment and are standing in a position from which you can see the Academy of the Arts, switch the player on again. On Basil Island, Vasilievsky, the Sphinx, placed in front of the Academy of Arts, are watching everything that is happening. They are original Egyptian from the old city of Thebes. They were brought to St. Petersburg city in 1834, 9 years after the events we have described. Tell us, you who know everything, what is your new dwelling like? Listen, they answer. Petersburg is born by the universe space, unmeasurable waters in which the heaven is drowning. Petersburg was born from the warmth of hearts that have been longing for the good of Russia and for glory. Petersburg was born from the belief that beauty might be able to change the world by making people seek happiness. If the best of the Russians were able to protest madly, then after having paid for their madness, the Russians will become wise and will understand what St. Petersburg wants to tell us. The city tried to become the northern Venice. The city tried to become the northern Palmyre. The city has stayed as it is, a brilliant and tragic messenger of eternity. Petersburg is a city of the Sphinx, the prophecies of which are so deep that they will never perish throughout centuries. Yes, Petersburg is a Sphinx city. That is the light of the sun over the water. Take care of the city, ladies and gentlemen of Russia. Take care of the city, inhabitants of the earth.